Yes, greetings. This is Yadon. Yeah, so here, did you know? Remember the government was shut down, longest period of time. I think this was the longest government shutdown. Of course, we had government shutdowns before, but this is one of the longest of the government shutdowns. But did you know that basically, they've come to an agreement. But you have to understand that Congress, in coming to agreement, part of the fine print is on hemp, banning hemp. So I got a couple of things to show you. Called a video, I think it was on legal. Very good right there. I heard it, I said, wow, I knew it was something. They say the devil's in the details, so to speak. So here on Cannabis, this article right here, just to show you, most people are not even aware of this. You know what I mean? Whether you are a so-called cannabis consumer or not. Kind of reminds me of, the Cannabis Matrix. You get a copy of that, the Cannabis Matrix. Maybe I should put a link. Definitely a very important read, because when you understand some of the basic principles, you can understand a little bit what's going on here. But here's the thing. Congress bans what they call intoxicating hemp in deal to end government shutdown. So as part of the deal, and now many ones will think, oh, it was just the Republicans, it's Trump. Now Trump is, of course, he's the president and he's going to get the blame that he's going to get, but it's not really just Trump. Remember, you've heard one say that, there's a left wing and a right wing, but it's the same bird. It's still the same bird, whether left wing or right wing. So, a ban on THC. What is this whole bill all about, and what will be the effect? Some would say things is about getting high. No, marijuana is still, but this talking about the THC, right? THC, hemp-derived THC products, like, the gummies, the drinks. And even if you really look at the law, it might even be the CBDs. Now, there's a lot of different categories of products, and some are more medicinal in their effect, and even have certain what you call scientific verification of their efficacy. So it's not just like back in the days when the Rastafari and the Rastaman, and others, spoke about how healing of the nation. The Rastafari is about the healing. Ain't this something? Rastafari was correct from such a time. All the brethren, all the ones that went through all that great persecution, just to burn, some Ishams and some, but not only just to burn it in the smoking form, but to use it in the full sense. Now, this is not to go into the efficacy of marijuana and the use, the hemp, the products, and, THC. We're talking about THC. Now, this is against cannabinoids, hemp-derived cannabinoid products. So you might just hear something about it and think it's just limited. No, this is broad. Like it says, it's in the fine print. Congress bans most, right, of hemp-based THC products. Now it's about the delta, the particular level, of it. But this is a wide range of possible potential products that will be affected. Not just products, but the whole industry, the whole so-called cannabis and the hemp-based industry has been shuttered by this. So for all these days, talking about the government shutdown, the big talk was the EBT cards, and people not gonna get no food for Thanksgiving and this and that. But in order to resolve it, and here's what's interesting, I mentioned this briefly about the Trump. Trump is, of course, he gets blamed for this, because he's the president, and the GOP in Texas and blah, blah, blah. But also what people need to know is the Democrats were very much for it. Because people would think, oh, it's those Republicans, those conservatives, and the religious folks and everything like that. Well, yeah, it was some of them, but it was also some of your Democrats too, right? Remember, it's still one bird, whether left wing or right wing. So Congress bans most hemp-based THC products, and they'd say the devil's in the details. So please go research this just to find out what's going on, because this is an example of what they say the New World Order, right? Nouveau Ordo Seclorum, and what they're trying to do to, destroy, like what order order out of chaos, so to speak. You see the chaos of this, right? And what about all these psychoactive products? Something about the soul active products, because that's what the real THC aspects tap into. As I mentioned, the Cannabis Matrix, check it out, check it out. Definitely like to put a link here. Just want to remember when we upload this video, but we wanted to share this right here because it's very important, and a lot of people, this is like about a couple of days, right? A couple of days old, I think. A couple of days old. This is a couple of days old. Let's just check on. Yeah. So big problem, right? This is a big problem right here. So this shutdown, right? The shutdown deal, right, was basically the THC, right? The Ishins, or rather the THC, the oil, the psychoactive element, getting into Delta 8, Delta 9, get into the THC, I think A, and these particular categories. It's very interesting, not to go through a lot of details here, but I think Legal, the YouTuber Legal that touches on marijuana and cannabis, he went into a very good breakdown if you want to get more of the details. Here, this is just to put it out to the audience, some of our audience and others that don't know about this, and what you think about this, right? In order to make a deal in the shutdown, that the cannabis was sacrificed. Cannabis sacrifice in shutdown deal, right? Who's responsible? Is it Trump, right? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats? Or is it just the same bird, the same old bird right there? So Congress bans most of the hemp-based THC products, and they're going into the real psychoactive, the so-called high effect or the psychoactive effect, especially these that have derived from the hemp. So what they was doing is taking the hemp. Of course, hemp is another kind of byproduct from the general plant, right? But if you understand science from like the hemp, understanding science, you can derive from the hemp THC, right? And in deriving the THC, that THC can be derived at some higher levels than even what is in the regular, naturally produced. So it is true that a lot of this is scientifically and artificially kind of produced out of the hemp, out of the hemp and everything like that, and that they are very psychoactive. They're very high. This is getting into the higher levels of the delta, right? And there's a variety of product, right? Like right here, poll conducted, right? This was earlier, right? Of Texas voters who wanted hemp, derived THC consumables, like these edibles, and also it can affect even a lot of the oils and a lot of these so-called medicinal products, because some of the medicinal products have kind of low levels, right, of hemp-derived THC, right? Now, here this says to remain legal. This is what the voters wanted, right? But what eventually happened, right? When we talk about what eventually happened, all right? So let's go to the top right here to just show you a couple of visuals. So we know that Congress was shut down. Longest shutdown in history, right? The longest shutdown in history. So Congress was shut down, right? They decided to make a deal, right? And this deal, right? Texas about to ban hemp products, right? So this is something coming out of Texas right here to ban THC products. Here's why. The proposed law, right? Now remember, that was just in Texas, but now this has become federal, congressional, right? Senate Bill 3 would ban consumable hemp products that contain any, right? Underline that word, any synthetic cannabinoid, right? The cannabinoid, right? Often known as Delta 8. Non-intoxicating and non-psychoactive CBD or CBG would remain legal. Right, the psychoactive. Remember, the psyche. The coin in Greek is the soul. Right, so we have to understand this on that level too. Right, that will remain legal. Thus, Cannabis Matrix, that compilation book that we have republished in print, is very, very necessary to understand. We can say the psycho-spiritual aspects of the warfare, so to speak. But those who advocate, they say the ban could make access to and production of these products difficult, very difficult, right? Now, it's about a year before these things really come into effect, right? So this next year, I think more people will get more information about it, but most ones are probably just happy because the government shutdown is over, right? Now, some news is new and some news is old, right? Donald Trump, the president, signed the THC ban Wednesday night. That includes a ban on a lot of THC products. So I said it was about 3 days or so ago, right? The last minute addition, the footnote, what they used to call it, the pork. So it's not the pork so much so, right? Not so much pork, but it's the hemp, right? It's the THC, right? The THC, the pork in the bill, right? They added the pork in the bill. No, they added the THC at the last minute. This was the last minute addition to the government funding deal to end the shutdown. It tightens up the 2018 Farm Bill definition of hemp. All right, so we're talking about hemp, one of the main products and byproducts, generally speaking, from the plant. All right, so Donald Trump is the one who said to sign the THC ban hidden in government spending bill, but actually what it is was the government shutdown. And the Democrats had a lot to do with this even being an issue. Right? The Democrats were supporting this ban as well. And it was some of the Republicans because in some of their constituent areas, their constituents, like the Texas ones, they have a lot of their people down there, and there's a whole industry, right? They said like 30, I think I was hearing numbers like $30 billion. So this is somewhat deceptive because Trump, he signs the THC ban. No, what he signed was, the deal for the government shutdown to end. That's what he signed. Now, within what he signed, because of the two wings of the bird, the left wing and the right wing arguing. But you have to notice that they put this into there, and the Democrats had a lot to do with it. But the Democrats are scrambling now, right, to kind of pin the tail to the donkey or the Donald, right, to stick the tail on Donald Trump. That's why this right here reads the way it does. It's somewhat deceptive because you say, oh, THC ban hidden, right? And you'll say, oh, he just signed a THC ban. No, he basically signed the end of the government shutdown, the spending bill, right? So stock up now. This is what a lot of people are saying, stock up now, right? So right here, spending bill signed by Trump to end government shutdown, just so you know, right? Included a ban on nearly all, you hear that word all, any and all THC products, right? And byproducts, especially these products that are high in the psychoactive element, like the Delta 8 and 9 and THCA and these other, you could say, synthetic, because they are scientifically derived. They don't come from the plant naturally. So let's keep that in mind too. Someone was talking about, they got such products out there that is how can I say, well higher, so to speak, like that has a much more of a THC count than any of the average natural products. And this is something that we noticed from back in the days with we used to occasionally peruse High Time magazine. It was always about getting more THC, getting it higher than high. All right. Well, this is going to deal a blow to the Texas hemp industry. Right. And this is where it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes down, so to speak. Right. Will this bill go up in smoke? Huh? Will the bill go up in smoke? That's the question. That's the question to be decided, right? Will the bill go up in smoke? Right? Right? Legalize it, advertise it. So Trump is getting the blame, right? And hey, he's the president, right? His people did fight, or the Republicans did fight to try to protect their industries, their constituent industry, like the Texas and everything. But in order to make this shutdown, imagine all the things that the Republicans and the Democrats, the Democrats were not agreeing on. Democrats want to push a lot of things, right? But it's pushing this right here that has really caused the government shutdown to come to an end, right? So in other words, it's like the marijuana industry, right? And over 30 to maybe 80, who knows, billions, these billions of dollar industry, has this been sacrificed? right? So some were saying, well, Trump is trying to do this for marijuana. Well, yeah, he's just the president. You know what I mean? His constituents, this is the city that spirits the city on the hill, 1,000 points of light, all of that, right? Nouveau Ordo Seclorum, right? Will this have a part to do with the New World Order? Is this a part of the New World Order too? All right? Now, what is natural? Is anything natural anymore? All right? What is natural? We may have to ask, what is nature? All right? What is natural? Even though a lot of these are synthetically derived byproducts from the hemp. So it's like the hemp, hemp is a great building material. Hemp. Hemp is a great building material. All right? More or less a material like, yeah. Is this bill kind of pointing to natural? Yeah. Is this a way of one's... You see what happened with the tree, the eighth, Da'at Tov Ra, the eighth Da'at, tree of life, right? Or the tree, rather, right, of good and evil. Let's talk about this in the terms like Cannabis Matrix, the tree of good and evil. There are some good, right, from what's known as the cannabis or the cannabosum, Hebrew, the cannabosum. There are some good things that we can derive from the plant known as, called marijuana and known as, cannabis. But they're also the ra, right? Tov, the good, the tov, the ra, right? And the ra, the evil. And we really have to consider what's really going on, with this whole marijuana thing, right? It's an interesting biblical tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the good effects and the evil effects, right? Now, this here says that Trump is considering reclassifying marijuana as a less dangerous drug. It's almost like one's recognized, this is what science shows us we can do. We can take hemp, right, that generally, you can't really smoke hemp and get any psychoactive effect from hemp. But by taking it into the lab and using da'at, gnosis, knowledge, using science, scientia, right? Using science, you can take the hemp, right, that is THC less overtly, take it into the lab, right, and then you can derive from that, right, some very high levels of THC, the delta, getting into the high delta 8 and 9, and them range right there. So here, and looking at what it says right here in the Daily Mail, that Trump is considering reclassifying marijuana. Now, this is mainly talking about the plant. You see, some people confuse when they talk about cannabis, right? These terms. We have to understand the terms. Cannabis, right, generally speaking, and the hemp products, and then from the hemp byproducts that derive the THC consumables, right, and then the various different type of consumer products like the gummies, the gummies, everything from the gummies, the edibles, the drinkables, the eatables, all of that, you know what I'm saying, right, the vapables, right. And what's the interesting thing is the THC content, right? Right. When we look at the natural, which is like the marijuana, the natural, and then we look at what is the AI derived, the scientifically derived byproducts and the effects. So that there is some interest, right? He wants to make major change to marijuana laws across the U.S. Is this a case of people, first of all, finding out, okay, this is what we can do, right, with science, but then also to see the potential harmful effects of the science. Remember the tree of the knowledge, eight, da'at, tov, ra, right, the tov, ra, the good and the evil. And therefore, this might be what this is all about Trump wanting to make major changes to marijuana laws. Now, he may want to do some things, but, it's the Congress, right, that hold the keys to the purse. We see that with the EBT. So we got from the whole EBT thing, right? No, on the EBT is not to talk right now, right? But now it's to the THC, All these acronyms, EBT, THC, now it's about the THC and the CBD, right? The CBD products and byproducts. And what about the GOP and the DEMs, the Dems, right? And how the Dems, some of the Democrats, have effectively hidden their hand, right? Let's look at the top right here. Okay, so Trump signs bill to recriminalize. This is November 12th, about going on 4 days ago, right, on politics. Right? Trump signs bill to recriminalize hemp THC products. Excuse me. Years after approving their legalization. So we get it made legal, right? It was made legal years ago, but now, as of November 12th, 2025, as part of the government shutdown deal, so people are going to be able to eat. But to take these hemp-derived products, you know what I'm saying? THC, right? Consumable products, right? So Trump has been made the poster boy for this right here, Trump, right? But really, it's all of them, right? Left wing, right wing, right? It's all of them, right? President Trump has signed the spending bill, right? Remember we showed you where they say Trump signed the THC ban that was hidden? Yes, it was hidden, but that gives one the impression that this is what he signed. No. This government shutdown was the longest shutdown in American history. You know, the longest. They've been shut down before, but this is the longest. Where the two sides, right? I thought America was supposed to have like nonpartisan, you know, but anyway, it's the way it is. What it is, right? So President Donald Trump has signed a spending bill that includes provisions to ban a majority of consumable hemp products, following a historic weeks-long government shutdown. The Senate approved the appropriations package on Monday to fund critical agencies, like, you know, like the EBT, and also for the air traffic controllers and the military. A lot of people haven't been getting paid because it's government shutdown. I mean, just amazing that even America, I was speaking to one of my brother in the UK, and just, getting his view of what he sees from over there, and how they do it over there, like whoever's in charge, they have the spending bill, like government has to function, you know what I mean, if it's supposed to be government, but for this shutdown is, like air traffic controllers and certain vital aspects, right, of the United States of America, looking at it as a system that it is, corporation system, government, that these, the military not getting paid. Can you imagine? Critical agencies, people are not getting food and other social services, being jeopardized because these two sides, the right wing and the left wing, or the left wing and the right wing. As I mentioned before, and maybe we'll have time to get in some detail, but I know a lot of other people are covering it, how the Democrats, right, many of the so-called Dems, are trying to point the finger at the Republicans, but to understand the role they played even with this shutdown, right? Because we say, oh, it's Trump is doing this. You have to understand that even when Obama was in office, and there was a lot of Republicans, that the Republicans were able to hold up things, right? And had to get Obama and the Democrats then to go and renegotiate different things, right? So the government shutdowns have happened, but this definitely was the longest. So the House of Representatives followed suit on Wednesday, right? Voting 222 to 209 to pass the bill, right? So the Senate, so usually ones will say the Senate has the Republicans in it, right? And usually the House has a majority of Democrats in it. But it's kind of interesting what has happened. This kind of shows you right here, right? So the Senate approved the appropriations package, right? And the House of Representatives, I guess they didn't want to defend the THC derived products. They said, listen, we got to keep this moving. Think about it. Critical industries, people flying around on planes, and the military protecting the country, and the national interests at home and abroad. Can you imagine? All right? Can you imagine? All right? Oh, this is the Torah portion we had. All right? But here. But what is really behind this? I came across this the other day. It's very, very interesting because I kind of missed that whole bill thing at the time, but then it was brought to my attention. Now, so is it the religious right? Right? Or is it the religious folks on the right and the left? Weed is witchcraft. Repent and follow Jesus. Right? Bible is true. Now, some have this kind of idea right here. We need to consider it or is it the pharmaceutical companies? Think about it. The pharmaceutical companies. Now, compare this right here. Now, this is like a biblical meme right here, pointing to so-called weed. Well, weed is not even, weed is a pseudonym. It's pseudo, it's false. It's not weed. Of course, weed is what the people call it. Weed, you're smoking weed. It's weed, but it's not really accurate. You take weeds in your backyard, you smoke it, and see what happens to you. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same thing, right? You say it's unscientific, and it's incorrect. It's wrong. It's false. So even people seeking to do the work of the Lord, right, does that give them the right to lie and to be false? You know what I'm saying? But weed is witchcraft, okay? All right, so down here they have Galatians. Witchcraft is a sin, right? The word witchcraft is translated from pharmakia, right? Pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaceuticals. Do you take medication? So the people that will promote this, do you take any medications? Are you on any medical, like anything, your doctor has prescribed something, you go to the pharmacy. Do you go to the pharmacy and you buy anything from the pharmacy? So the pharmacy is really the pharmakia. You see how simplistic people are? We have to understand what we're saying, right? Pharmakia. So pharmakia was going on long before, this whole weed thing. Weed is a thing that became popular, in America, during the early 20th century. But before that, it was something that was used but never made popular. You notice how these things get popularized by later and the ignorant, in a possessed generation. So pharmakia, the G5331, and is defined as medication. So let's ask the question, do you take medication? So what does this meme really against? Right? What does this meme really against right here? Is this meme against, right, so-called marijuana or cannabis, right? Or is it against weeds? You got weeds in your backyard, it's against weeds, right? Or are they telling us that in Galatians and in the Bible, the word witchcraft is defined as pharmakia, that is translated from pharmakia to witchcraft in the King James Version, 400-year-ago Bible, and this is actually defined as medication, right? I want you to understand what's going on. So we get this ban against hemp-derived THC products, right? We get this ban against hemp-derived THC products, right? Now, many of these THC products, cannabinoids, many of these things have been used even medicinally as well as medication, right? Now, everybody's pointing, well, marijuana is weed, and weed is pharmakia, and the Bible says this and that, but what is the word pharmakia, right? It's defined as medication, like the pharmacy. So are we dealing with hypocrites or dealing with true people, right? So do you deal with pharmacy? Do you go to pharmacy? Are you on any medication? You see what I'm saying? So it's pointing to people with the marijuana and the cannabis, but these other people that are pointing to them, they're on the pharmacy. They go to the pharmacy and they take their medication. Do you see the hypocrisy? Right? Okay. Right? Now, by extension, right, they say it's magic, which is very vague. Right? Literally or figurative. Then they say sorcery, witchcraft. So is the pharmakia, is the pharmacy a form of sorcery, witchcraft? Is it? Now people say, oh, no, this is the pharmacies. But are you sure? Right? Are you really sure? How can we be sure? Something to think about. So after legalization, now comes recriminalization. And it's very interesting, like these things that say, how can I say, It's amazing. It's really amazing that to end this government shutdown, right, and also to restore people's, EBT, what I mean, and people's and pay the different critical agencies like the air traffic controllers, the military, and other vital services. Right, the sacrifice has been of cannabis. Cannabis has been sacrificed. But here, this says that cannabis is medicine. Interesting. Most medicines, right, came from natural herbs. People, are the overly religious folks saying that, well, we're not supposed to derive medicines from nature, right? This is what the Bible actually teaches us, right? Which means that their definition of what so-called witchcraft, sorcery, right? Witchcraft, sorcery, what was the other word right there? They had witchcraft, sorcery. Let's go over here, right? Witchcraft, sorcery. What was that other word? Yeah, okay, it was witchcraft, sorcery. So over here, you see what it says here at the bottom of the page, right? Pharmacia, medication. Is it really the Big Pharma? Is Big Pharma really the one that's behind this? Because many people have been taking these CBDs, and other, hemp derived and cannabis derived byproducts, right? And not speaking about getting high or anything like that, but really have been treated, right, and medicated, without the harmful side effects that most big pharma, many big pharma, they tell you on the product, oh, this thing here, are you suffering this or that? You can get such and such and such, and then they give you the some of the effects might include, and if this happens, go to your doctor, stop using it, or see medical attention. And wait, hold on for a moment. That's the big pharma for you. These, these very pretty, expensive, psychoactive commercials. They talk about CBDs and talk about THC being psychoactive, but really they're commercials. They get in your psychology, watching like, oh wow. And then even when they tell you that the harmful effects might include vomiting, diarrhea, suicidal ideation, you're like, what the hell? But then the music and the commercial is so like, wow, this seems like heaven. So where is the sorcery and where is the witchcraft? The sorcery and the witchcraft, right? Big Pharma, didn't they tell you that the word witchcraft is pharmacia, is pharmacy? Can you imagine if they translate the Bible correctly and people saw that there? But here, the truth is that the medicines, right, the potential medicines from natural and natural products and the byproducts of nature, right? When of course used, when used responsibly, correctly, like what they say, do no harm, in that sense. That which one does no harm? Is it the pharmaceuticals? Big Pharma? Is Big Pharma really behind this? For the government shutdown. So cannabis, right? Cannabis has been sacrificed for the government shutdown, right? To end the government shutdown. Is Big Pharma behind it? Right? Big Pharma behind it. And the Trump and the Dems are blaming Trump. Right? When you actually look into it, they bear a crushing and an awful responsibility in it. But then most people who are Democrats and support the whole liberal democratic agenda, right, they really don't look into it. Now, we're not against, the principle of people deciding. But these parties are very dangerous. They're very deceptive, and even though you might, support one particular, say you might support the view of, say, a party may have a certain view on something that you agree with this. You may not agree with everything else, but you agree with this. You know what I'm saying? But don't get caught up. America's about sport. They'll make a sport. They'll make a mockery of you. You join your team. I'm on this team. I'm on that team. People say, well, you can't be neutral. We can be on the true good, the true God side. All right. Speaking of the true good, the true God, let me show you something over here. All right. Okay. All right. Let's show you over here. Here we go. Have you seen this before? Right, this is interesting. Wanted, 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 wanted for the production and distribution of illegal plants. God is wanted. No photo available. There's a picture on my wall. You know that one right there? Yeah, there's a picture on my wall. Yes, yes. But Rastafari already told them, Rastafari was the first to tell and remind humanity, of the medicinal, the healing, right? That this thing that they call marijuana, marijuana, the witnesses of the crucifixion of Christ, Mary, right, the mother of our Lord, and Yohanan and John, marijuana, right? You get that, right? Claims to have created everything, God, right? Including all illegal plants. But check out that whole thing, illegal plants. Who has made God's creation illegal? We have evidence in writing. So here, I want to show you this right here. I have given you every herb bearing seed. The majority of medicines, when you study the history of medicines, have been made from the knowledge and experimentation with certain type of plants. And many have been found to be beneficial. And these are also, even nowadays with the pharmaceuticals are able, the companies are able to derive synthetically, right, the same thing, right, that nature provided. But of course, there are side effects, right? There are side effects. And many of these side effects are almost unheard of in nature. Nature is like straightforward, but man with that knowledge, the Eitz, the Ant, Tov, Ra, knowledge of the tree, of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, it's the good, the beneficial, and the harmful usage of what we know as people, all right? And whether ones have the genuine morality, to do no harm. I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth. In Genesis, the Bible. Now here it says, also wanted as a person of interest and co-conspirator with God, right, is Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMoshiach, Jesus Christos. He claims to be the Ben Elohim, the Son of God, and really just and really righteous cultural leader, cult leader, right, sought for interview in regard to knowledge of Father's activity, of Elohim Ha'am's activity, already nailed to the cross, or the cross of his tree, remember the tree, once. Reports suggest he may have risen again, right, as is testified in the Besorah, in the Brit Chadasha, in the New Testament, with the renewed covenant, right? Report sightings to 1-800 police state. I thought this was very interesting. You see down at the bottom, report sightings to 1-800 police state. Is this what's going on? What are we witnessing here with this cannabis thing, right? All right, and marijuana and the Bible, all right? There's some reprints and publishing that we have here. Okay, cannabis. All right, it's interesting over here. I want to share this in Ezekiel chapter 34:29. Some say this is speaking of what's known as the Kana Bosam. All right, in the Bible, it's known as the Kana Bosam. And so we get cannabis, right? Cannabis, cannabosa, right? Nature's cure, right? Could it be, right? Big Pharma, right? Now that is a really billions of dollar industry that is maybe behind the scenes of this, right? Behind the scenes of this. And since we know many politicians are beholden to various interests and special interests that kind of funds them in their political careers and offices. Is this one reason why both the Dems, the Democrats, were pushing this, right? And the Republicans, but now they're trying to pin the tail on the Don Trump, the Donald, right? Pin the tail on the Donald. But just Ezekiel 34:29, check it out, the plant of renown. Interesting, because that's the plant that led to the the government shutdown, or the ending of the government shutdown. Now, as I mentioned before, we can go into scripts in the Torah, and bring it out as we can do right here within the Torah scripts. You see it right there. Uk'ene, right? Bosim. Uk'ene and the K'ene Bosim. K'ene Bos. Cannabis for short, cannabis, right? Cannabis. So here we have cannabis in the Torah, right? Cannabis in the Torah, right? And in the Torah portion, ki tisa, right? When you take the sum, when you lift up, right? Almost like when you get high in a sense, ki tisa, right? Cannabis. You see it right there, right? And in defining what it is, right here, one, on the basis of the cognate pronunciation and Septuagint readings, some identify the cannabis with the English and Greek cannabis, at the hemp plant. And now we know that much of the Greek was influenced by the Hebrew, right? Some try to say it the other way around, but we have more references that Afro-Semitically, that backs up that Japheth dwelt in the tents of Shem. That's to say that the Greeks learned from the Hebrews, right? So that right there, that's not our point. Our point is right here, is that what does this all mean, Chaverim? Right? Cannabis is a medicine. So who would be against all this cannabis? And the potential, right? If you notice that this is being banned, but not banned that, people been taking these products and be getting sick, or been taking these products and be getting hurt, or taking these products and hurting other people, or taking these products and these products are implicated in accidents. No, these are the fears and the phobias of a lot of these people that are hooked on the pharmakia, right? The pharmakia, as the scripture says. But cannabis is medicine, right? Just a couple of areas right here. We get cell protectant, analgesic, right? This is what Elohim, the Creator, right? Elohim HaBorei has provided, right? Through nature, right? And these things are not nothing new. They may be new to the Western, Gentile, white world, but we know that in the ancient world, right, and the other parts of the world that have experienced these things, they've known about these products and byproducts, and never before anywhere in history do we see any of these things as problematic. Only in the latter day times, right, of the Gentiles, or one might call it white supremacy, or the Anglo-American. I like to call it politically the Anglo-American world order. Cannabis is medicine, neuroprotectant, right, natural relaxant, anti-inflammatory, bone stimulant, inhibits cancer growth, and sedative. And now, this is not like 40, 50 years ago where people say, oh, no, that hasn't been medically tested. No, a lot of this has been medically tested and proven. Why do you think the cannabis industry, is a billions? I've heard 30, I think maybe 80, the different quotes of how many billions of dollars this industry, and they serving a purpose for a lot of people. Now, imagine a lot of people that have been using, right, the cannabis, right, and have been getting good medical and treatment effects. And now, because of this ban, right, I'm going to go back to the pharmakesis, right, the pharmakia, right? And this is where we're saying that it's very possible the pharmacy company, the Big Pharma, let's just say it like that, Big Pharma is behind this, right? Because as people start to use the cannabis, right, and the cannabis-derived byproducts, they are not using, the Big Pharma. So who is the winner and who is the loser, right? And the Big Pharma industry, right, is much more, how can we say, is much more established, right? That even though the cannabis industry is making a lot of money and, and also serving a lot of people, right, we should understand that the Big Pharma industry, right, is a much more established industry, right? And they've been suffering hits and losses. Think about it, 2018, right, through the time of, they was trying to recover some of it during the time of the, what happened in the 2020s, right? They call the, pandemic, so to speak, right? The Peter pandemic, right? The Peter pandemic. So the cannabis matrix, this kind of goes into some of the spiritual, why the psychoactive elements, right? Why that which has been testified, right, to be actually healing, right? So Judaically, Hebraically, also the cannabis, Hasids, right, the Ancients in the ancient days, right, the word of God, which is the truth, right? Beware of the works of the flesh, definitely pharmaceutics. Instead of trusting in what the Creator has created, right, and we go from there with what's natural, you're trusting in what these carnal minds have created with their big pharmakeia, right? And we also see the byproducts of it, right? And now beware of BS stuff like this, right? I mean, a lot of this is just garbage. You know what I mean? Because we already just broke down what pharmakeia is. They even say right here, medication, right? And that brought to mind who is really the one that is behind this crackdown and this almost 180-degree reverse, right? And the laws that be. As for me, as for I, Anoki, as for I and I house, Ani va'ani, we keep it kosher, keep it kashrut. And Elohim said in Bereshit, Genesis 1:29, Elohim said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed. Are the seeds in danger? Cannabis seeds, the last word here on the cannabis seeds, right here from Genesis 1:29. Then Elohim said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed. Right? Watch out for the seedless stuff. Every plant yielding seed that is on the surface, on the face of all the earth. And every tree, the trees, right, that has fruit, yielding seed, all about the seed. Are seeds in danger, right? It shall be food for you, and along with food, also medication for you. Beware of that knowledge of the tree, right, of Tov Ra, right, you know, because this is what is good. Could be the first trump, might as well be the last. As it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. You know, back to life, back to reality, back to nature. Right? The move back to nature definitely seems to be the most logical one right here. But check it out. Check out more of it for yourself, brothers and sisters. I know I was going to go to some of what's written over here, but, you know, suffice it to say right here, you know, what does this ban actually means? You know, you can look into it more for yourself. You know, there's still some time. Check out what other commentators also say. THC, this ban, how will the ban affect you, right? And how will the ban also affect medicine? We see very clearly that the pharmaceutical companies are definitely the big loser, right? Are the big loser in all of this, even though they can profit from it. You know what I mean? Seeing that they understand the science, the knowledge, you know, of the beneficial and the harmful things to do. But overall, you know, understand what their product basically is. Something like the cannabis, you know, the hemp, the byproducts, the THC, and the potential, you know, medical benefits. Save your seeds, save your seeds. Don't burn the seeds, save your seeds. Save your seeds, save the THC. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom, Yeshua Shalom.